Hello, this is Greg Harrelson with Century 21, the Harrelson Group, down in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And I want to discuss how to get a property sold in the Myrtle Beach market when the market is a bit tough. The market over the last few years has softened. As you know, 2024 it was a soft market. 2025 is tends to be a soft market, but the good thing is prices are not necessarily going down. So we've got a soft market, but a soft market right now is really determined by the number of sales that are taking place. There are just fewer sales this year and last year over previous years. But the good thing is that the demand is still there, so prices have maintained. Now there are pockets of the market, maybe some condo buildings, that are seeing excessive inventory, so they're having some challenges. Maybe the prices have declined a little bit, but in most residential markets right now, you're seeing that the prices are holding strong. It depending on, of course, if the developer is still building in the neighborhood, then sometimes there could be some price adjustments that might be necessary. But for the most part, the number of sales is down a bit, but the prices are pretty stable. But I want to talk about how do we get a home sold or a property sold, home or condo sold in a tough market? Because the easy way is just to say lower the price, but there's no reason to be giving your equity away if it's not necessary. The first thing that I want to mention to you about selling in a tough market is in a tough market, you've got to make sure that your real estate agent's creating a lot of demand for your property. Demand is going to help you get a property sold faster, but it's also going to help you get a property sold for a higher price. So there's things that I'm doing that's creating demand for my sellers' properties. And that is number one, I'm going out there and I'm aggressively advertising, spending money on finding buyers. Now, how do I do that? So you probably know about a website called Zillow. Well, what most people don't understand is yes, it's free to get your property on Zillow. Any agent can put your property on Zillow. But did you know that very few agents ever get any buyers off of Zillow? When somebody hits that little button, contact agent, they don't typically contact the listing agent. So a lot of sellers think, oh, my property's on Zillow, therefore my agent should be getting buyers. If your agent does not have a budget, if they're not spending money and paying advertising dollars into Zillow, which by the way, 90% of the agents are not doing it. So there's a 90% chance that that you would talk to an agent. They're not advertising on Zillow. At least they're not spending advertising dollars to get buyer leads from Zillow. I'm doing that. I'm spending quite a bit of money on a monthly basis to get buyer leads from Zillow. In addition, if you Google different neighborhoods or real estate for sale in the Myrtle Beach area, things like that, you're going to see that you'll also see our websites because we're spending money with Google, making sure that we're at the top of the search results when people are looking for real estate, different real estate terms, in the Myrtle Beach area. We want to make sure that we're showing up at the top because the people that show up the top, the people that are investing in advertising online, they're getting the most buyer leads. Those buyer leads are what we take to our listings that's the demand that we're generating to take those buyers to our listings to get them sold a lot faster. The challenge in a tough market, a lot of agents are not making that much money, so therefore they start cutting their ads budgets. And you just can't do that in a tough market. You have to stay the course and understand that you got to call all these buyers, take them to these listings, and the sales the result will be a sale and a sale at a good price. So the first thing that I want to say about selling in a tough market is making sure that somebody, whoever's helping you get your property sold, making sure that they have a method and they're advertising on the internet, spending an advertising budget on the internet to get buyers. Very important. Don't assume that just because they're a real estate agent that they have buyers. That could not be the furthest from the truth. The second thing is you got to have exposure. So, you first talk about advertising budgets, an agent that's out there and generating buyer leads. That's one form of exposure, but I'm really referring to promotional exposure. Your property's got to be out there. It's got to be seen. Some things that we're doing here is creating brochures on every one of our listings and distributing those brochures. As a matter of fact, one of the things that we do every time we take a new listing or every time we make a change in any of the details of the listings, let's say we change the price or change, different things about the property, I send a notification out to all the agents who have buyers that are looking for properties like yours. You see, in the MLS, an agent will have a buyer lead. I will have a buyer lead. We'll put their parameters in there, like residential home between 300 and $400,000, 3 bedrooms in a certain area. There's thousands of buyers that are saved in the system with different search criteria. Same thing for condos or land, multifamily, etc., even commercial. So as soon as I make a change or I get a new listing, I make sure I identify all the people that have a saved criteria similar to the property that I just listed or just adjusted in some way, and I send a notification to all of those buyers. Typically, it's going to be a few thousand buyers are going to have that type of criteria saved, and I'm going to make sure that each one of them get notified of what's going on with your property. See, I got to keep your property top of mind. Now, some people like open houses, some people do not like open houses, and I will say this, depending on the property, it could have its advantages. Sometimes there's no advantage to it, but these are things that we can do to expose the property. I'm always looking at this. I'm always looking at, how do we increase the number of showings? And before we get people to physically show the property or physically visit the property, we've got to get them to visit it virtually. Virtually, what I mean is online. So whether we've got a blog, create ebooks, electronic brochures, send these notifications to all these people that have these saved searches on websites and MLSs, those are the things we have to do to help people see it visually, right? Or virtually. And once we can get them to view it virtually, then that's the beginning stage of getting them to view it physically. So we got to have exposure. And the last thing is you got to stay up to date on what's going on with your listing. I'm constantly giving my sellers updates. Hey, we've had this many showings. Here's the feedback on those showings. And I know, look, if we get a lot of showings and no offers, that tells me we probably need to make a slight adjustment. Maybe it's pictures, maybe it's condition. Who knows what it might be? But it just means we're in the game, but we got to do something a little bit different to get people to make that offer. Or there could be cases where you're on the market and you're getting no showings and no offers. Well, that probably needs an adjustment too. So it's important that you're constantly monitoring what's going on. The communication back and forth between the listing agent and the seller is critical because there's information we're getting at all times. We know how many calls we get and inquiries we get. We know how many showings we get. We know what the feedback of those showings are. The question is, do you know? Because an agent knowing that information without the seller knowing that information and then having conversations and creating strategies based on the information, the feedback you're getting, if you're not doing that, that's a challenge. These are the things that we have to do in a tough market in order to get our property sold and make sure that we get them sold at a good price. I hope you find this information helpful. Just wanted to kind of give you some information. If you're thinking about selling, please reach out to me. I'm Greg Harrelson, Century 21, the Harrelson Group, and I'd love to help you. Talk to you soon.